Protect!
Top 10 vampire movies of all time. When it comes to horror cinema, few creatures have captivated audiences like the vampire. Equal parts alluring and terrifying, vampires have been reinterpreted across decades of filmmaking, evolving from silent-era monsters to tragic immortals, bloodthirsty predators, and even comedic misfits. In this countdown, we explore the top 10 vampire movies of all time, chosen for their originality, impact, and ability to keep the blood pumping. 10. Only Lovers Left Alive, 2013. Directed by Jim Jarmusch. In a genre saturated with action and horror, Only Lovers Left Alive is a poetic outlier. Jim Jarmusch gives us an art house take on vampirism through the eternal love story of Adam and Eve, two melancholic vampires drifting through centuries of art, music, and disillusionment. Tom Hiddleston and Tilda Swinton are ethereal in their roles, exuding both world weariness and deep romantic longing. Rather than depicting vampires as monsters, the film shows them as deeply human, bored by humanity's self-destruction but still finding fleeting beauty in it. Set in the decaying cities of Detroit and Tangier, the film explores themes of cultural extinction, immortality fatigue, and existential angst. With its hypnotic pacing and haunting soundtrack, Only Lovers Left Alive isn't a traditional vampire film, it's an elegy. 9. Blade 2, 2002. Directed by Guillermo del Toro. Forget everything you know about vampire hunting. Guillermo del Toro's Blade 2 redefined what a modern vampire action film could be. Wesley Snipes returns as the half-human, half-vampire daywalker, who this time must team up with his sworn enemies to fight a new, more terrifying breed, the Reapers. Del Toro infuses the film with his signature gothic visuals, grotesque creature designs, and visceral action choreography. The Reapers are a monstrous evolution of the vampire mythos, with unhinged jaws and a hunger that threatens both humans and vampires alike. More horror-heavy than the original, Blade 2 is both a genre-bending spectacle and a dark fantasy that reinvigorated vampire cinema for the 2000s.
All those lives on my conscience! All that blood on my hands!
8. Dracula, 1931. Directed by Todd Browning. Bela Lugosi's Dracula didn't just bite necks, it bit into the fabric of cinematic history. This 1931 Universal classic introduced generations to the vampire aristocrat, setting the standard for nearly every Dracula portrayal that followed. With his thick Hungarian accent, intense gaze, and flowing cape, Lugosi created an enduring icon of horror. Though technically primitive by today's standards, the film's atmosphere, gothic set design, and minimalistic soundscape generate a mood of creeping dread. Lugosi's Dracula is simultaneously seductive and sinister, a nobleman with death behind his eyes. Dracula cemented the vampire mythos in Hollywood and remains a haunting reminder of how simplicity can breed timeless terror. 7. What We Do in the Shadows, 2014. Directed by Taika Waititi and Jermaine Clement. What if vampires were just roommates? What We Do in the Shadows answers that absurd question with hilarious results. This mockumentary follows a group of undead misfits living in a rundown flat in Wellington, New Zealand, trying to navigate mundane tasks like paying rent and arguing over chore charts, while still feeding on the living. Diego, Vladislav, Deacon, and Peter are centuries-old vampires who bicker like old married couples and dress like they've stepped out of a Renaissance fair. The genius lies in the juxtaposition of their ancient nature and modern lifestyle. Whether it's struggling to get into clubs because they need an invitation or teaching a newbie how to drink blood without ruining the carpet, this film turns horror tropes into pure comedy gold. Yet it still respects the lore, with nods to Nosferatu, Dracula, and Twilight alike. 6. Thirst, 2009. Directed by Park Chan-wook. Leave it to Park Chan-wook to make vampirism a metaphor for desire, guilt, and spiritual decay. Thirst follows a devout priest who becomes a vampire after a failed medical experiment. Torn between his moral convictions and newfound bloodlust, he embarks on a violent, sensual journey of transformation. This South Korean masterpiece is raw, unfiltered cinema. It's drenched in blood, eroticism, and theological conflict. Song Kang-ho delivers a stunning performance as a man who once preached salvation and now grapples with monstrous instincts. The film pushes boundaries, both stylistically and morally, while reinventing the vampire myth through a uniquely Eastern lens. It's equal parts tragic and grotesque, a brilliant fusion of horror and human weakness. 5. Interview with a Vampire, 1994. Directed by Neil Jordan. In Interview with a Vampire, immortality isn't glamorous. It's excruciating. Based on Anne Rice's novel, the film chronicles the centuries-spanning life of Lewis, a reluctant vampire played by Brad Pitt, as he recounts his tale of loss, bloodshed, and existential dread to a modern journalist. Tom Cruise shocks as Lestat, the seductive yet sadistic mentor who drags Lewis into the abyss. Kirsten Dunst, as the eternally youthful Claudia, steals scenes with a terrifying performance as a child vampire trapped in a woman's rage. The film is lavish in style, dripping with Camelot decadence, but its true power lies in the questions it asks. What does it mean to be damned? Can you live forever and still find meaning? It's a gothic epic that romanticized the vampire mythos for an entire generation. 4. Near Dark, 1987. Directed by Kathryn Bigelow. Before Twilight sparkled, Near Dark got dirty. Kathryn Bigelow's underrated vampire western hybrid brings southern grit and noir tension to the bloodsucker genre. It follows Caleb, a young man who falls in with a nomadic gang of vampires after a chance encounter with a mysterious girl. This isn't your cape and coffin vampire flick. The vampires here are feral, dusty, and unglamorous, more outlaw than aristocrat. Played by genre favorites like Lance Henriksen and Bill Paxton, the gang wreaks havoc in dusty bars and moonlit highways. The film strips away the romance and reveals the horror of living in the margins, hunting in the shadows, and burning under the sun. Near Dark is lean, mean, and unforgettable. 3. Bram Stoker's Dracula, 1992. Directed by Francis Ford Coppola. Francis Ford Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula is an operatic fever dream of a film. Visually baroque and emotionally overwhelming, it sticks closer to the original novel than most adaptations, while injecting it with blood-soaked grandeur. Gary Oldman's Dracula is a tragic figure, cursed by God, driven by love, and cloaked in shadows. The film is drenched in rich reds, elaborate costumes, and innovative practical effects. It revels in its theatricality. Winona Ryder, Keanu Reeves, and Anthony Hopkins round out the cast in a story that blends horror, romance, and supernatural spectacle. It's a film that turns vampirism into both a curse and a love story, filled with doomed passion and mythic tragedy. Coppola didn't just retell Dracula, he reinvented it. 2. Nosferatu 1922. Directed by F.W. Murnau, the grandfather of all vampire films. Nosferatu may be a silent movie, but its eerie visuals speak volumes. F.W. Murnau's unauthorized adaptation of Dracula introduced audiences to Count Orlok, arguably cinema's most horrifying vampire, with his elongated fingers, rat-like features, and haunting gaze. The film's shadowy cinematography, expressionistic design, and use of real-world locations created an atmosphere of dread that still lingers a century later. It's not just a relic, it's a blueprint. From the use of the vampire's shadow creeping along walls to the slow, inevitable march toward death, Nosferatu created horror imagery that defined the genre. It's essential viewing not just for vampire fans, but for anyone interested in the origins of cinematic fear. 1. Let the Right One In, 2008. Directed by Tomas Alfredson. The greatest vampire movie of all time isn't about grand castles or epic battles. It's about loneliness. Let the Right One In tells the story of Oscar, a bullied boy in a wintry Swedish suburb, who finds solace in Eli, a peculiar girl who only comes out at night and needs blood to survive. This is a love story, but one soaked in tragedy. Eli isn't your typical child vampire. She's ancient, dangerous, and heartbreakingly isolated. Their friendship forms the emotional core. of a film that quietly dismantles the vampire myth, making it more intimate, more disturbing, and far more human. The snowy landscape mirrors the coldness of their world, but their bond is deeply warm and affecting. Alfredson directs with restraint and melancholy, allowing the horror to creep in slowly and deliberately. The violence is sudden, brutal, and purposeful, never gratuitous. Let the Right One In is a genre masterpiece that redefines what a vampire film can be. It's horrifying, beautiful, and unforgettable. Final takeaway: from the silent shadows of Nosferatu to the blood-soaked elegance of Bram Stoker's Dracula, from the art house cool of Only Lovers Left Alive to the emotional chill of Let the Right One In, vampire cinema has proven to be endlessly versatile. These 10 films represent the best the genre has to offer, each capturing a different facet of what it means to live forever, hunger endlessly, and haunt the night. Whether you're drawn to romance, horror, tragedy, or satire, there's a vampire film on this list that will sink its teeth into you.